An exclusive GMB survey with ADHD UK has highlighted the severe impact of medication shortages on families as the new school term begins, with 68% of parents saying they're facing supply issues with their child's ADHD medication. There's an estimated 2.6 million people with the condition in the UK, and it's on the rise. As figures show, the number of those taking ADHD medication has risen by over 50% in just under a decade.
Well, Amber Rose Gill rose to fame in 2019, winning Love Island. Just 3 years later, she was diagnosed with ADHD. She joins us now to share that diagnosis for the first time on TV, alongside the Chief Executive of ADHD UK, Henry Shelford. Welcome to you both. It's great to see you.
Thank you.
Now, Amber Rose, tell us about knowing, finally, that you have ADHD. Why did you go for a diagnosis?
So I think I always functioned just a little bit differently than everyone else. And luckily, in the past few years, it's been talked about a lot more, like medical conditions. And I just kept thinking to myself, I feel like maybe you've got ADHD and that's the reason that, you know, you're struggling to get work done and stuff like that. And so then I went to go and get diagnosed, and then I had it, and it was like a mixtured feeling of like relief and sadness for like all of the lost years when I was in school and not knowing and being undiagnosed, to then the relief of finally I have an answer as to why my brain functions a little bit differently than everyone else.
And tell us, how would you describe your brain functioning a little bit differently?
So I'd say there's like two types of ADHD. There's the hyperactive, which is the standard one that you would think about in like boys in school that have ADHD, and then there's inattentive, and I'm more so inattentive, so it's like ADHD paralysis, where I feel like I can't get a task done, being distracted really easily. It's all those kind of internal things, so it doesn't present itself very openly, so it's hard to notice.
And then, as a result of your diagnosis, you were offered medication.
Yes.
Did you take that up?
I tried not to at first, for a lot of different reasons. I think there's a lot of stigma around medication. If you're not in pain, like, why do you need medication? And it's kind of an own personal thing, so people don't think that you should be on, or people's opinions are that you shouldn't be on medication for ADHD. But then I was just like, what have I got to lose? It might help me in my daily life. And I just said, you know what, I'm going to do it.
And what's the impact of that medication? Has that changed the way your brain works?
So from diagnosis, everything just got a lot better because I was a lot gentler on myself in itself. You know, I knew, OK, you've got ADHD, maybe you can't do that today. And I was able to manage it a bit better. And then that was just enhanced when I was on medication as well. I felt like I could get more done. I wasn't getting as distracted. It was just, yeah, overall, my life just improved.
Henry, we were hearing in the queue, 2.5 million people plus diagnosed now with ADHD in our country. But this is something which has grown very fast, and that's really been about awareness. There'll be very many people watching our programme who don't understand ADHD and don't understand how it affects people. What are the most common misconceptions that you find out there in your work with ADHD UK, people's lack of understanding, things they get wrong about what the condition is?
Well, the most common thing is the one that Amber talked to and Amber's reflection of, that everyone thinks is a little boy running around. and that does include people, but it also includes teachers and some GPs. And it's not. So hyperactivity, which often people think of like, you know, like a cat, like run and then sleep. It's much more like an energy that must be used. I must vent my energy all the time, some kind of movement. And a little boy is more likely to get out of their chair and be disruptive. That's going to get them a referral. A little girl, if they've got hyperactivity, is more likely to nudge their neighbour and start chatting with them. And that's probably not going to get you a referral. Hyperactivity is actually the lowest component part of ADHD. So 15% of people are predominantly hyperactive. Predominantly inattentive is about 30–40%, and combined is the rest. And so the inattentive is much more. And one of the things we don't want to do is end up with this idea that boys are hyperactive and girls are inattentive. That's not true. But, you know, the inattentive kids are much less likely to get picked up. And be very clear, there's a huge problem around girls. There's underdiagnosed of boys and girls. It's 2.6 million people have ADHD in the UK. About 500,000 have a diagnosis. It's about just over 20% girl to boy kids. It's around 50-50 in adulthood. So there's a huge gender issue.
Can I ask, because Amber talks about her reluctance to take the medication, but that it does work for her. We know that there is a huge supply issue with one particular drug still. But is medication always the answer to ADHD?
No, absolutely not. So we know that medication has a positive impact on around 80% of people. Long term, it's about 50-50 opt for medication or not. I do. Most people will talk about it being life-changing. I would, and to have it removed in this way is as life-changing again.
Right.
Look, ADHD is tough. You're only going to get a diagnosis if it's having a debilitating impact on your life.
And you talk about medication being life-changing for you. Can you just describe how it changes your life? And if you couldn't get access to it, what that would mean?
Sure. Look, ADHD is really tough. So and we know that most harshly through the suicide figure. So 1 in 10 men or boys with ADHD will at some point try and take their own life. And it's 1 in 4 women or girls. And so that's how hard it is. And that's how important medication can be. In terms of my attention, I don't have control of my attention. So it's either going to cascade into this, into that, into that. And that's so frustrating. When I'm talking to you, I'm going to lose thinking about something else. But also, I'll go into hyperfocus. That lack of control means I'll zoom in for hours and hours and hours. So one of the reasons I didn't get a diagnosis when it was first introduced as an idea to me was like, I can't have ADHD because sometimes I focus. And I mean, you can't interrupt me for hours. And in fact, that's a part of it. But the big thing is what I'm not doing is the thing I need to do that's important to me. And then I blink, it's 4 p.m, I've not done it, and it's panic.
But the medication, when you're on the medication, that all levels out.
It's a helping hand, and then I'm able to focus on the things I want to focus on. And that includes, the conversation with you, with my kids, being present with them. Like, it's not all about work. Like,
yeah.
Honestly, it allows me to be more the me I know I am and want to be.
But when you look back at your life, being in school as a teenager, going on Love Island, different things you've done, are there things you look back on now which at the time you didn't understand about how you were dealing with situations where you can now think, oh, I see now that was the ADHD?
In school, for me, I just thought I was a naughty child. I just thought, I was always getting told off, I was always getting distracted, I was getting pulled out of lessons, all different kinds of things. I wasn't having a good time in school.
But you weren't hyperactive in terms of like...
I wasn't hyperactive.
No, because it was inattentive and distractible,
so, like, distracted, not hitting deadlines, not doing homework, things like that. And now looking back, I'm like, oh my God, that is what was happening there. And I just it makes us feel a bit sad because I'm like, it just went so under the radar and nobody noticed.
That's so interesting.
It didn't do you any harm on Love Island, though. I mean,
It didn't.
I mean,
it hasn't done me that much harm. Like, I've somehow managed to make success out of everything and use it to my advantage. But definitely in Love Island, when you come off the show, there's an expectation of getting all these brand deals and going on TV shows, and I couldn't keep up with the pace of everyone else. I really struggled with that.
As you go forward now, is the ADHD something you think of as being a burden, a problem, something to control, maybe taking the drug? Or is it something which also has some things you can channel in a positive way?
I think that you can use it to your advantage, and that's what I try to do now, rather than look at it as like a condition that's not helping us. I look for ways in that it can help us.
How do you do that?
Well, obviously on medication now, I can't choose what I hyper-focus on, so I can get the things done that I need to get done in a very short amount of time that people are shocked by. But yeah, I can use it to my advantage in different parts of my life now.
Henry, as we're talking, we're getting people, parents particularly, know that both of you got an adult diagnosis. But people are getting in touch. Mike says what he's hearing from ADHD nurses is that one of the challenges with medication is due to the explosion in private adult ADHD diagnosis, We've struggled to obtain medication for our son, who's near to running out, affects concentration and behaviour in class. Michelle says massive shortage of ADHD medicine. She's been trying for 3 weeks, have been given an alternative, but her daughter's 12. It's having a massive effect. Mags, my son has ADHD, he's autistic. Due to the shortages over the past year, we've had to change brands. We've been struggling with this for over a year. When will the shortages end? I mean, the Department of Health says they're pretty much cleared up, apart from one specific medicine. And as I understand it, I think it's the one that is most commonly prescribed. I'm not sure if that's the case. One specific medicine. If it's the one that's most popularly described, that's a huge issue.
Well, although it shouldn't be, right? So it do need to be firm. This is a UK-only problem, because everywhere else you can go to your medic and go, there's none of this, can I change to that? Whereas here, the ability to go and see your prescriber, so GPs can't change your prescription, you've got to go to your specialist, and the wait times for that is often in the years. And so you can't change it. So yes, there are alternatives, but they're locked behind glass and you can't get them. And that makes this a UK-only problem. Otherwise, you would get something.
Should GPs be able to switch your medication? That would sound like the
I think
obvious.
it'd be great if GPs got the training and support to be able to prescribe, and that would be very helpful.
What's really interesting is that you have a health service which is struggling after the pandemic, and therefore you can't get the appointments. As a consequence, children who lost all that time of learning in the pandemic now not getting the medication which they need to concentrate. I mean, this is something which is just urgent to sort, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but the government doesn't know how big the problem is, because it doesn't track in schools how many kids have ADHD and the outcomes. It does for autism, for autistic children. It knows those outcomes. But for us, we're just lost. We're lost in an average of SEND results. And that is one of the things they should change.
Yeah, special educational needs results. Well, I hope you don't feel lost this morning, because this is a massive issue. And thank you so much to both of you for speaking out so openly about it.
And it's great that you're turning it to a positive for you. That's really
You have to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much. If you're affected by that issue, you can find advice and support at itv.com/helplines.